Con nosotros la señora Deborah Nadoolman Landis.
Para mí es un privilegio estar en esta mesa. Conozco a Débora por sus films, por sus libros y sobre todo por una idea particular que tiene con respecto al diseño de personajes. En sus libros o en los que pude conocer, ella habla de ayudar al director a contar la historia. Es decir, no es una ropa, no es un aditamento, no es un diseño para una actriz, es un diseño un personaje. Y eso me hace admirarla. Es decir, creo que es como uno encara hoy el cine, ¿no? Es el camino que uno encara. Así que, bueno, creo que seguramente Débora lo puede contar de mejor modo y profundizar en esto, que es un concepto diferente, nuevo y diferente.
Thank you very much. I'm very impressed we have this many people on a beautiful afternoon just to talk about costume design. So thank you so much for coming today. First of all, I am privileged to sit with Margarita Jusid, who is a colleague, a well-known production designer, and also Horace Lannis, who is a great Argentine costume designer. And what you have in front of you, really, which is pretty exceptional, is the bridge between old Hollywood. Horace is old Hollywood, really. It's the bridge, old Hollywood and new Hollywood sitting here. Horace is going to be able to, I'm sure, explain about his experience working when he was a young man and throughout his career, where the notion of costume design really was all about the star and all about the star's clothes. However, even when Horace was working, all the clothes that Horace designed had to be appropriate for the scene in which the actress appeared. So what I'm here to really talk about today a little bit is, has taken me a long time to really be able to articulate. And I don't want to get too political about it, but my feelings about costume design are really about gender and politics. So those of you who came today to hear me talk about movie stars in their underwear, you're going to be very disappointed. Although I will answer those questions after.
También en underwear, o sea, la ropa interior también tiene que estar muy bien, que le quede muy bien, porque los detalles, los mínimos detalles que la cámara toma. Y yo voy a contarles que yo desde el principio de mi carrera vestí los personajes. El personaje, la estrella, por supuesto, porque siempre la estrella en esa época, Zuli Moreno, Tita Merelo, la superstar, pero de todas maneras vestir el carácter, el personaje. Hay una frase de un cineasta francés, Louis Daquin, que dice que en la pantalla se puede imponer un personaje por su vestuario más que por 5 líneas de diálogo de un autor, con perdón de los autores. Pero podemos, como dijo la señora, ayudar al director, porque el director es como el director de una orquesta, que todos los elementos, el director de fotografía, la escenografía y el vestuario tienen que vestir el personaje y después... Yo trabajé en blanco y negro mucho, pero también mucho en color, de las 106 películas. Y en el color también uno es como si pintara, y eso lo sabe muy bien Margarita, que se debe como pintar en la foto y que no se repitan tonos y saber de género, saber qué va a figurar, y siempre el director es el dueño de la película.
So when I started talking about how this had to do with politics and gender, I was really talking about the time that I was president of my union. A friend of mine, Milena Cananero, who is a great Italian costume designer, said that cinematographers had become the directors of photography. Why aren't we the directors of costume design? So when I was president of the union, I was really looking at salaries. And this may not be true here, may not have been true here in Argentina, and really this is tied into, certainly into the contribution that costume designers make to every film. But it turns out that costume designers are paid much less than any other department head on a film, and have always been.
That's the problem.
Is that true?
Sí.
So Horace, this is what I was getting at. Although you and I are very clear, we're very clear about our contribution to the storytelling, right? Yeah. Very clear. And we're very clear that we never met before. We never met before I met you today, correct? We share this profound understanding of what we do. Where the salary differential comes in is because the people that we're working for really don't understand our contribution. So here's the thing. I've chosen in my own writing to try to leave the word character behind. I try not to use that word anymore because I've moved on now in my own writing to talk about the costume designer as the creator of the people in the movie. Because there's a big difference, in English anyway, between the word character and a person. Filmmakers really expect you to believe that they want the audience to be stakeholders in the outcome of their story. In other words, that somebody is really in jeopardy and somebody's really going to die. And this really separates our clothes here today, if this was a scene in a movie, it really separates our clothes from costumes designed for a movie, for a character. I mean, somehow, character can mean anybody on a stage, and anybody two-dimensional, a cardboard cutout. But that's not what our filmmakers want. Our filmmakers want a room filled with believers who are going to be in the story. So essentially what we're asking you to believe every single time now is that every person in the movie has a life before the movie began. This is a very, very complicated idea. And this is something that costume designers work on all the time when they have to justify every single piece of clothing and accessory that you're wearing today. Okay, so how many people in this room are wearing a gift that was given to them? How many people in this room are wearing new clothes, something that they bought this month? How many people in this room are wearing clothes that are over 5 years old? How many people in this room are wearing clothes that they bought on sale? How many people in this room are wearing clothes that you bought on vacation? And you could tell me the story about the vacation, right? And when you bought those clothes. Okay, so here's the deal. Costume design is very complicated because costume designers can't design you until we know exactly what your address is and who you are. And that's even before we start talking about the composition of the frame and where Horace was starting to talk about color, black and white, and having real control about the color palette in the film. We have to say that the story is king, and nothing, including hair and makeup, which is usually the case, but hair and makeup. Terrible. Go ahead.
And the period hats.
Yeah, and the hats. Wait. Oh, no, we're agreeing. Hair and makeup,
Los
hats,
sombreros de época. Okay.
and the wrong costume can sabotage a scene quicker than anything else. I'd like to tell you an interesting fact to really underscore what Horace was talking about with black and white movies. The Academy Awards, the Oscars, were founded in 1928. An Oscar for costume design was not established until 1948.
Y creo que fue Hamlet.
I think it was for Hamlet.
There were two Oscars actually given
Con
the first
Laurence
year.
Olivier.
Yeah, but there were two Oscars, this is my thinking, there were two Oscars given in 1948 for a costume design. One was for a color film, and the other was for a black and white film. You'll see where I'm going with this. And two Oscars were given for costume design, for production design, art direction, and for cinematography from 1948 until 1968. For 20 years, there was an Oscar given for black and white costume design and for color costume design.
Yep.
I'm getting to my point here. The last Oscar in black and white costume design was for Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which was designed by Irene Sharaff in 1968. This movie starred Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. In this movie, everyone except for Elizabeth Taylor only had one costume change. It was a modern film, and Elizabeth Taylor was wearing a fat suit. Irene Sharaff worked very hard to make Elizabeth Taylor look ugly in that movie. And yet, that movie, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, won the Oscar for Best Costume Design in 1968. Since 1968, all the way up to now, only two other contemporary movies have won the Academy Award for costume design. And those were All That Jazz and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Both featured a lot of ostrich feathers. So I'd like to say to you that contemporary movies, modern movies, movies about the here and now, movies about the people that the audience really can relate to, the people that are your expertise, are not usually featured for Oscars in costume design. So don't go looking for an Oscar for Silver Linings Playbook anytime soon. So even though the costumes were designed by, here's the point coming, I knew you were waiting for it, same costume designer as the artist, Silver Linings Playbook the following year, absolutely no recognition. The same Mark Bridges, who designed The Artist so beautifully and designed Silver Linings Playbook, used the same creative process, worked with the director, read that script, worked with those actors, broke down the composition of that frame. One is a period film, gets recognition, their costumes, and the other one, nothing. The idea that somehow we don't create a frame is interesting to me. It shows the power and the mystery of movies. I'm always impressed or humbled by our imagination, the power of our imagination. And this idea that the three of us spend so much time thinking about, suffering, worrying about the frame and the people in the frame in this small rectangle or a big rectangle. Yeah, well, I was going to say, actually, and I hope I mean this, actually, you're not supposed to notice the clothes. I mean, unless you're meant to notice the clothes and the director wants you to notice the clothes as part of the story point. I mean, it's supposed to be that if you're really in the movie, you're supposed to leave the movie, and if I say, how did you like the movie? You say, I love the movie. And then if I said, how did you like the costumes? You have to say, oh, I'm so sorry, Deborah. I love the movie, but I didn't notice the clothes. But I'm going to take my mother tomorrow night, and I'll look for the costumes.
Estamos de acuerdo completamente.
Right. I got all the translation.
We totally agree.
Yeah, we agree. Okay,
Sí, estamos de acuerdo.
panel over. Do you want to take questions?
¿Quieren
Do
que
you wanna take some questions?
respondamos a preguntas
Do we
ahora?
have time, or?
No sé cómo estamos con el tiempo.
Mire, mi pregunta es hacia todo el panel, pero especialmente, la señora Landis, por el tema de la ciencia ficción. Así como ella remarcó que es muy importante el vestuario en las películas, de época, quisiera preguntarle ahora que digamos que la ciencia ficción es algo muy importante dentro del cine, que la importancia, valga la redundancia, del vestuario en las películas de ciencia ficción. Es decir, que puede llegar a ser un 50%, 60% o más importante que en las películas de época.
Science fiction can be anything, and there's no book to look in. So really, we have to follow our director, and it really depends on the world the director wants to create. So I can't think of any other genre where the director's and the writer's point of view is provides such an important blueprint for the work of the art director and the costume designer. There are all kinds of visions for the future, and some of our futures look like, John, what's that thing that I want to go to, that festival? Yeah, I want to have the post-apocalyptic film festival because it makes me laugh so much. So you can have sci-fi that's clean, completely unadorned, stripped down, modernistic, or you can have Blade Runner, filthy, post-apocalyptic. It's the writer's choice. It depends on what we do. Some directors can't read a drawing, but ultimately, we have to agree on what that future looks like.
Hola, buenas tardes. Yo soy estudiante de profesorado de teatro y me gustaría saber cómo empezaste tu carrera, si te fue difícil conseguir trabajo y no coincido con vos en el tema de que la gente no ve el vestuario de las películas. A mí me encanta mucho, me fascina ver los vestuarios, sobre todo los de época, los sombreros extravagantes, los vestidos. Y bueno, me gustaría saber eso.
Okay, I have an answer for that. This is what I think. I think that there's an old saying about gardening. When you start to garden, you like big, colorful flowers. When you continue gardening, you like smaller flowers. As you continue gardening, you like leaves, and then you like the underside of leaves. And I'm up to the point in gardening where I like bees. So what I'm trying to say is that it's easy to like big, beautiful dresses.
Bellísimos.
I adore big, beautiful dresses, and I love Las Vegas. And I would like to retire to Las Vegas.
Me gustaría
And
retirarme
I
en Las
would like to
Vegas.
buy thousands of Swarovski crystals and completely cover all of you with them.
Mente.
Everybody in this room. So nobody loves bling more than me. Don't get me wrong. I just take what we do very seriously. And on a really basic level, I really wanted you to bring all of you into our world. I love a beautiful gown, right? And I learned how to do everything with my hands. So the way I started was I started working in the theater, which is the best place to start. And you really do have to learn how to make a flat pattern. You should know something about dressmaking, absolutely. If only because when you're in the fitting room, you have to be able to talk to your tailor and to your seamstress. Because either the clothes have to fit or they're meant not to fit, but you have to know the difference. You have to know how to draw, but you don't have to be Rembrandt. All right, but you have to be able to communicate, you have to be able to speak to your director, you have to know something about the world, you have to be an anthropologist, and you have to know movies from the very beginning. You have to be able to talk about movies from the very beginning. You have to know about the history of movies. You have to see every movie so you can talk about them, so you know where your work is in context of the history of the movies. So I'm just going to say that I started working, and to make it really short, I started working in television when I was 23 years old, and I just put clothes away into a big wardrobe, do you understand? Into costume stock for 3 years. I just polished shoes, and that's how I began.
Para Débora, esta pregunta que tiene que ver, su trabajo me parece genial y quiero saber cómo combina haber hecho vestuarios tan iconográficos como, por ejemplo, el de Indiana Jones o el de los Blue Brothers, que es una herencia de la televisión, pero a pesar de eso las camisas están arrugadas y Aretha Franklin tiene la ropa sucia en el merendero también, está usado, está vívido por los personajes. ¿Cómo logra trabajar que sean tan iconográficos y a la vez tan utilizados, tan recorridos? Y por último, la chica de la pregunta anterior me pareció preciosa, nada más.
Bueno,
Como para cerrar.
creo que
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Okay, so here's the thing. I did not make them iconic. That's not what I was doing. The three of us work on movies the same way every time. We work on flops the same way we work on hits. We have no idea when we get the script and after we finish work on a movie if the public is going to go to see that movie. And usually the studio doesn't either. And let me be very clear, it's the public who creates the icons. So listen, I designed a movie called 1941 for Steven Spielberg. It was a huge flop. I had a great time. I loved making the costumes. Nobody went to see it. I did the same job. He sent me the script, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I said, what the hell is that? What? What's that movie about? The Ark of the Covenant? Huh? Right? Makes no sense at all. I did my job, right? I just did my job. And I have to say that, and I've said this before, but Spielberg had a very clear idea of what he wanted that costume to be. I mean, Steven and I sat and we watched Lost Treasure of the Incas with Charlton Heston, 1954, Paramount Pictures. That movie is almost shot for shot Raiders of the Lost Ark. And Charlton Heston wears a leather jacket and a brown fedora. So I'm really not a genius. I mean, I was just doing my job.
Simplemente estaba haciendo mi trabajo.
Vos tiene una muy larga experiencia, pero a mí me gustaría saber lo que fue más interesante para vos, si la tele, el teatro o el cine.
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, you know, in the theater and in opera and in ballet, the audience looks at the costume and, most importantly, at the set the entire time. I mean, if there's magic, it's really in the theater. So in the theater, you're looking at an actor from the bottom of their feet to the top of their head the entire time. And television is really about an actor's head. It's really about close-ups and the face. So that's not a lot of costume design.
Bueno, la pregunta tiene que ver con el cine latinoamericano. Yo quería saber si usted veía cine latinoamericano, si le gustaba el diseño de vestuario del actual cine latinoamericano, si veía que tenía alguna especialidad o algún detalle a destacar, y si le gustaban los diseñadores latinoamericanos.
You know, I don't have any experience with Latin American films or seeing Latin American films. The closest I got, and I'm answering you honestly, was that in 2007, I was a juror at the Cannes Film Festival. Cannes. And in that festival, I sat on the student film and short film jury. And I can tell you, honestly, that I saw so many great student films being on the Cannes jury from Argentina and from Latin America. And the winner, my year, was an Argentine film. And I don't remember the name of the film, but you will remember because it was the story of a professor who kidnaps one of his students and falls in love with the student. It was like a Lolita story. It was fantastic. And we all agreed it was the best of Cannes that year.
Buenos días, buenas tardes. Quería decir que es un honor conocer a Deborah. Soy muy fanático de las películas de su marido. Lo sigo desde toda mi carrera y por simbiosis también soy fanático de tu trabajo, así que es un honor conocerla. Quería hacer dos preguntas. En primero, con relación a la comedia, toda la charla ha girado en torno a que el trabajo del diseñador no tiene que destacar por sobre la película, pero en las comedias, sobre todo en las comedias de su marido, a veces el vestuario o el arte está levemente exagerado para estar a tono con la historia.
Just a little bit? Just a little bit
exagerado?
No.
¿Un poquito, te parece?
A lot. Y entonces quería preguntarte cómo tiene que trabajarse esa sutileza para no irse a la mierda, para mantenerse, digamos, como dentro del tono y no exagerar demasiado. Sobre todo con los ejemplos de las películas de John, y en particular me gustaría que me contaras cuáles son las influencias para el vestuario de Coming to America, de Príncipe en Nueva York, que es una de mis películas favoritas. Muchas gracias.
Okay, listen, you asked me a lot of questions. So listen, in comedy, and you're exactly right, because I'm really, because comedy is a paradox. Look, John's films, his comedies, are over-designed. As the costume designer, nothing would appear on screen. Nothing would appear on screen without John's permission. So you know that in life and in comedy, everything is timing. So I could never have a costume that stepped on a joke. If a costume, however funny, doesn't work in a moment in a movie, it will not be there. And costumes can't be funny all the time. Yeah, you can't have 90 minutes of funny costume, right? So that's the answer to the question. The costumes are there with John's permission, and we certainly, he certainly permits me to be witty and funny with the costumes, but he gives me that opportunity. So when you see those visual jokes, yes, I created them. I always said, hey, John, do you think this is funny? But if it doesn't work, it doesn't appear on camera. Because as you know, comedy is a serious business. So for Coming to America, the inspiration, there was an inspiration. Well, it's an African Cinderella, you know that. And the inspiration is in England. There is an Oriental and a 18th century Oriental palace called the Brighton Pavilion in England. And it was an Oriental fantasy created by George IV, who was king after George III. So it's this tremendously refined, elegant palace that is like a Chinese wedding cake. It's delicious. It's fantastic. Look it up on the web. So my interest in creating Coming to America was to have this, the most beautiful, the most refined, the most westernized Cinderella fantasy of an African nation that never existed. And that's about it. I sincerely hope that the festival will have costume design as part of its program every year. Thank you very much for coming this afternoon.
Gracias por venir.